Period. My dad grew up is a Maltese guy that grew up in a black neighborhood in Detroit in the 60s.
Yeah.
He was there when tanks were driving, like his neighborhood. Tanks drove into his neighborhood in '68 during the civil rights movement. He was there
Yep.
for that. Everything that happened this year in the United States has the terrifying thing about Trump. This is the honest thing. Everything, including how he has handled the pandemic, has happened in the United States in the last 50 years.
Yeah.
What I actually think about, I think the United States is doomed personally because I don't. Although Biden is an improvement over Trump, he's not that much of an improvement over him if you look at everything Biden's done in the past. And I think
Yeah.
I think the problem in the states is this: your leadership has been for so bad for so long,
Yep.
right? That I don't know if they're going to ever change, and I don't see it. So I think honestly, what's going to happen in the states is I think what happened with COVID when COVID hit, it started the you know how a civilization can collapse. I think it started in the states personally. I mean, that might sound very negative, but I remember when Rodney King was beaten, and I remember like having a lot of the same talks that I had with some of my friends even in Canada about Black Lives Matter then, now. And it just
Yeah.
occurred to me that maybe nothing's really changed and maybe that's the real problem. But I don't know how to solve it at this point, you know? Is that
Well, there really is no way to solve it. You see,
yeah.
you see what happens. You see, one thing about Americans, a lot of Americans, is that it's not even their fault, really.
No.
They're engineered to have a very, very short attention span
Yes.
because there's so many things that are out there now, and there's so many like, hey, squirrel moments. Look at this. Don't look at that. Don't look at
Yeah,
that. Look
yeah.
at this. Look at this. Don't look
Yeah.
at that. I mean, a lot of media has been controlled. I
Hmm.
mean, there's at one point there were hundreds of media companies. Now there's six.
Yes.
There are six media corporations and conglomerates that control the airwaves of the United States. Now we're talking, let's say, just on average, 20 old men and women
Yep.
on the board of directors for each one of these six corporations. That's 120 people determining what the hell you're going to watch on TV and how you that's really it. And
Yeah.
it's beyond disgusting. And every people just continuously lap it up because I mean, if you keep people simple and if you keep them from engaging themselves in any type of creative thinking
Mhm.
or thinking outside the box, they're not going to notice what their average congressman who claims to do one thing is going to do to them. But you're more worried about, like, one of the Kardashians' lip implants.
Yeah.
It's sick. It's really sick.
Oh,
I
totally.
mean, there are people in their 20s and 30s talking about shit like this.
Oh, absolutely. No, absolutely. No, I that's why, like I said, I'm not so confident, like with Biden being president. I'm not confident anything's going to change. Not because I don't think it's impossible, but because he has a track record. I know what he's going to do because he's been there before, and
Yeah.
right, and that's the thing. Like at this point, I think what every other country should do is they should look at what the United States has done and
And not
avoid
do
it at all costs.
it. Yeah, not
No,
do it.
no. I mean, look, I don't know how to, I don't know how to fix it, but I do know that I don't want to see it. I don't want to see it in Canada. I mean, but the reality of the situation, even here, we're next door. Some of what,
Yeah,
some
no.
of what, some of what,
Excuse me.
some of what's down there is up here too, and I recognize that, and it's one of those things like I I I want consistency in my leadership, and I realize that that is maybe a pipe dream at this point in
Mhm.
history, but
Yeah.
that's what I want. I don't want anymore to have the situation where um I have to constantly question whether my leadership is coming or going, right? Because it would make it so much easier. Like, no one's fighting this stuff in Singapore, Japan, China, any of these other places because leadership, at least when it comes to this, is consistent. There isn't a up and down. We've had such even here. I mean, I can't help but wonder about the second wave that's coming here. If it wasn't for the fact that we let 200 kids go to school, right? 10 people can't get together, but 200 kids. We got. I mean, it's. I don't know. Like I said, that's kind of how I see it. It's like we have a lack of consistency in North America, and we're not as bad as the states. But that's not the bar I want to. That's not the bar I want to worry about anymore. Because
you really don't.
Yeah,
it's not fun. I mean, and you see it with people that at one point you were friends with or you loved, and it's like I had an issue. I don't know if I told you this. I might have said it. I had an issue with a friend of mine who lives in Staten Island, who's no longer my friend, and it was when I was first diagnosed with cancer, and I was talking to this person about how amazing the NHS was when it came to diagnosing what happened with me. Because before I left and before I wound up in England or anything else, I went to an American doctor. Now, this isn't going to be consistent with all American doctors. I'm sure that's not true. But this particular one, I told him about this, and he was just, oh yeah, well, we'll take a blood test. And look, did you play any sports recently? I'm like, yeah, I was doing a little bit of MMA, and he's just like, oh, that could have been it. Did you pull it? And I go, it felt like one. And he's like, it's most likely that the blood test we'll see what we can do with the blood test, and it's just, nothing came back from a silly ass blood test, right? So anyway, as soon as I get here, I get this thing checked out, and the doctor is almost, she's scared out of her mind, and she goes, we really need to give you a sonogram. So I got the sonogram, and then not even a minute after the sonogram, not even a minute into the sonogram,
they found it.
It's like, okay, we're going to do a biopsy. And then the biopsy came back as cancer. Now, I already told you the whole story about with me.
Yeah.
Now, when it comes to that, I was telling my friend that the NHS has pretty much saved my life. They're fantastic. And then she all of a sudden started getting into this jingoistic, nationalistic shit about, it's like, well, she's like, oh, please. And I'm like, what do you mean, oh, please? And she goes, American doctors are so much better than over there. And I'm like, pardon me? I'm like, wait a minute, what? I was taken aback a little bit because I'm just like, I don't get into political arguments with people because I don't get into political arguments with this one because we almost did, and she was like, it doesn't matter, I know I'm right. And I'm like, all right, I just won't talk to you about it. But she decided to pull that shit, and it's like, here I am. I'm like, hey, guess what? I have cancer, and she's like, yeah, but the United States is a lot better than England. How come you're not here to have it treated? And I'm like, wow.